So Joe Goldberg is born in 1988 to parents Rafael Pacero and Sandy Goldberg. Now Joe doesn't have the best upbringing because from time to time he gets to witness his father abusing his mother. So one day the family are at home and a fight escalates between Joe's father and his mother. And Joe was probably thinking, ugh, not again. However, this time Joe's father takes things way too far, abusing his lady to a point where she's almost unalived. So in order to protect his mother, Joe grabs the blicky and unalives his father. Now Joe is a kid at the time, so he doesn't get arrested, and the entire incident is chalked up to self-defense and protection of his mother. But then his mother goes, "Joe, I love you. I really do. But I'm not fit to be your mother anymore." And then Child Protective Services takes Joe away and he ends up in a group home. Now Joe isn't there for too long. He spends a couple of years there. However, he eventually gets taken in by a bookstore owner named Mr. Mooney. A wonderful guy. That's if your idea of wonderful involves occasionally being locked up in a cage for some quality reflection time. Right? Whenever Joe would do something wrong, Mr. Mooney would just lock Joe up in a cage. And then he'd be like, "Do you know how much I love you, Joe? Do you know how much I love you? I'm doing this for you." Right?
Also, this is crazy.
So because Joe grows up in an abusive household, and remember, Joe is just a kid at this time, so he's thinking, hey, maybe this is how people show love. Sometimes they might lock them up in a cage, and sometimes maybe love looks like pain, sacrifice, and punishment. So now that we understand Joe's character motivations, let's get into Dexter's. Now Dexter's story is a lot more traumatic than Joe's. So it's 1973 and Dexter is a baby at the time. His mother's name is Laura Moser and she works as a confidential informant for a cop named Harry Morgan. Now Laura's mission was to infiltrate a drug ring led by Hector Estrada. However, one day she's followed home by Santos Jimenez, one of Estrada's associates, and he sees her talking to the cop, Harry Morgan, and now her cover is blown. So, in order to send a message to others who might cooperate with the police, Estrada orders the unalivement of Dexter's mother. So Dexter's mother gets with a chainsaw in a shipping container while Dexter's there to witness the whole thing. Now, at the time, Dexter was still a baby, but what he saw in the shipping container changed his life forever. It remained in his subconscious and gave him a strong desire to kill, which he refers to as his dark passenger. Now remember Harry Morgan, the cop who Laura Moser answered to? Well, he ends up adopting Dexter and raises Dexter alongside his biological daughter, Deborah Morgan. But then one day Harry's like, there's something wrong with this kid. He doesn't like girls, but he doesn't like men either. He also has no friends, and his idea of having fun is skinning the neighbor's cat. Something is wrong with this boy, right?
That nigga crazy.
So Harry, who notices that Dexter might become a killer one day, teaches Dexter the code, a set of instructions designed to ensure that Dexter only unalives bad people. These include things like never get caught, only unalive people who deserve it, gather irrefutable evidence before acting, and live a normal life in order to blend in and look regular. So this is something Dexter has memorized and internalized for his entire life. And this begs the question, does Joe have a code? You know, I don't think he has a formal written down code like Dexter does, but he does have a pattern that he follows. For starters, Joe is incredibly obsessed with love. He will do just about anything for the person he loves. And I'm sure that sounds like a good deal to most women. And that's if your idea of a good deal includes getting stuffed in a body bag if you ever cheat on him. I mean, Joe has some serious abandonment issues. And whenever he feels like his girlfriend is slipping away from him, he lashes out. For example, remember Beck's best friend from season 1, Peach? When we got introduced to her character, I remember thinking, why is she always upset at Joe? What's her problem with Joe? And then she tried to kiss Beck and it all made sense. Peach was in love with Beck. And if you watch this show, I'm pretty sure you know how things work in Joe's mind. Once you're dating him, you sort of belong to him. And if you're dating Joe and someone else shows interest in you, there's a good chance that that person is going to disappear somehow. So, That's another part of Joe's code. Eliminate all threats as soon as possible. This includes people that are trying to expose his violent nature and people that want to take his woman. Now, when Joe does what he does, he's not trying to go to prison. So just like Dexter, not getting caught is a part of his code. Now, another part of Joe's code is, like Dexter, he also wants to appear to be normal. I mean, he works in a bookstore of all places. But despite that, he gets a lot of female attention. Joe hits nothing but net. Hey, that's another thing that Dexter and Joe have in common. Because Dexter also has a good track record. There was Rita, there was Hannah, that crazy Australian lady who tried to burn him down, and his own sister, Deborah. I mean, nothing happened between Deborah and Dexter, but there was that weird storyline between them in season 7, I think. And I'm not forgiving the writers for that storyline.
That was bullshit.
So whether he knows it or not, Joe does have a code. But the question is, how effective is it in comparison to Dexter's? And who is the most effective serial killer? Let's start with Dexter. Now, when it comes time to unalive people, Dexter is the type of guy who plans things 5 steps ahead. He'll do his research. He'll find out who you are, where you live, what's your family situation like. Do you get along with your father? Right? Dexter needs to figure out who you are as a person because then he'll be able to anticipate your moves and plan for it. Then once he knows who you are and knows that you're a killer, Dexter creates a kill room, which is essentially a room covered in plastic sheeting to prevent leaving evidence, like blood. So after he unalives the victim, he disposes of the body in the ocean. In fact, Dexter has a boat called the Slice of Life that he bought specifically to dispose bodies. Also, Dexter is a blood spatter analyst for Miami Metro, or at least he used to be one. And that's someone who gets to a crime scene, looks at the blood, and tries to determine how the crime occurred. So because Dexter has a lot of police knowledge, he knows all their tricks, and he knows how to not incriminate himself when he's out there doing his thing. So because Dexter is so meticulous and he plans everything, even though he has unalived about 100 people by now, and if Dexter existed in real life, he would probably be in jail by now. I buy the fact that he's not getting caught because Dexter is that meticulous and it seems believable. But Joe, this guy, man. Yo, this guy gets away with murder, literally. Now, one thing you can't deny about Joe's actions is a lot of the time they feel unplanned, but he somehow gets away with it. Like remember the time when Joe decided to take up jogging and stalk Peach in the process, right? Let me refresh your memory. So in season 1, Joe realizes that Beck's best friend Peach is suspicious of him, and this poses a threat to their relationship, so Joe decides to keep an eye on Peach. So in this scene, Peach is going for a jog in Central Park, New York, and guess who's right behind her? Joe. Looking very inconspicuous, I must say.
I can see you. Okay, I can see you.
So Peach is jogging, she's listening to her music, and then she decides to take a break in a very isolated spot in Central Park. And that's when Joe pops up from behind and attacks her right there and then, knocking her unconscious. Now, I don't know, I just don't buy it. This scene had me going, there's no way he'd be able to get away with that. First of all, I've been to Central Park 3 times, and one thing I can tell you is that forget trying to find privacy in Central Park during the day. It ain't happening, because you won't even find it at night. Do you know how I know? Because I've tried to find privacy in Central Park at night. It's impossible. Even if you think you're alone, there's probably someone out there just watching you, and you don't even know it. But fine, let's say that Joe did find some magical, isolated place in Central Park, and that's where he attacks Peach. Okay, but what happened to the CCTV footage? Isn't Central Park full of cameras? In fact, let me look this up right now, just to get my facts correct. Okay, so I can't find the exact number of cameras that are in Central Park, but ChatGPT, even though it's unreliable, says it's somewhere in the hundreds. So in real life, I don't think Joe is attacking anybody in broad daylight in Central Park without being seen by a bystander or a camera. There's just no way. But I will be fair, Dexter did unalive someone at the airport in broad daylight. At the airport. Meanwhile, I can't even get my laptop onto the plane without being harassed. And then we have Dexter over here just casually just unaliving someone at the airport, and then walking out with the body. And then he just walks out with the body. He just walks out of the airport with the body. And I was like, okay.
I don't buy it.
I mean, okay, I love this show. So I'm just gonna pretend that didn't happen. I think that was the first time in Dexter when I thought to myself, that makes no sense. But every time I'm watching You, I'm always thinking, didn't anybody see that? How is he getting away with this? Right, that's exactly how I feel when I'm watching You. It's still a very good show, but Joe is not on the same level as Dexter. He's way, way below it. In fact, let's say the multiverse happened and Dexter's world crossed over into Joe's world. In that universe, I'm pretty sure that if these characters ever met, Joe would end up on Dexter's table and eventually end up at the bottom of the ocean. And I don't think Joe would ever see Dexter coming because he'd be too focused on stalking his new girlfriend. Joe has a one-track mind. These are just my thoughts. Dexter versus Joe. Who's winning in your opinion? Let me know down below. See you in the next video.